Have you ever lain awake in the middle of the night with that feeling that something is shifting, not around you, but within someone who is part of your story, as if the universe was finally settling a debt that had been left unpaid for far too long? If you clicked on this, it's because something within you recognizes exactly what I'm speaking of. And in the next few moments, I will show you what is unfolding on these specific days, March 29th and 30th, with someone in your family, and why this could change everything. I'm not speaking of coincidence. I'm speaking of a process that has been building for far longer than you imagine, and which is now reaching its boiling point. Stay with me, because what I will reveal will touch something you may have given up hoping for. Let's begin with a direct question. Is there someone in your family who for years saw you in a way you knew wasn't true? Someone who repeated certain stories about you, who questioned your choices, who even treated you as the family's problem, while the person who actually created the chaos remained protected, untouchable? If the answer is yes, you are not alone. And more than that, you are exactly in the right place today. Because what is happening now, especially on these days, March 29th and 30th, is a silent awakening. A crack in a wall that seemed solid. And that crack has a name: consciousness. There is a person. It could be a brother, a sister, a father, a mother, an uncle, a cousin, who is sitting in the dead of night with a weight in their chest they can't quite identify. It isn't ordinary sadness. It isn't that vague longing that sometimes appears. It is something heavier, more specific. It is the weight of a truth trying to emerge, and that truth has your name. Before I continue, I need to tell you something important. If you have arrived at this message, if you were chosen to hear this today, it is no accident. There is an intelligence in the universe that connects people to what they need at the exact moment they need it. You are a chosen one, not because you are perfect, not because you never erred, but because you carry something that the dysfunctional dynamics never managed to erase: your true essence. And it is precisely this essence that is being... Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming, with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. Recognized now. But before speaking about what is happening with this person in your family, I need to help you understand how you arrived here. Because the story that was told about you, the version of you that circulated in conversations you weren't part of, in judgments made behind your back, that story did not appear from nowhere. It was constructed, brick by brick, with care, with intention. Think with me. Do you remember moments when you tried to explain yourself and were interrupted? Situations where your version of events never reached the ears of those who mattered? Times when you felt there was an invisible force working against your reputation within the family itself? That wasn't your paranoia, that was a pattern. In dysfunctional family dynamics, there is almost always a figure that psychology researchers call the central narrator, the person who controls the narrative. They don't need to shout, they don't need to be obviously cruel. Often they present themselves as the most concerned, the most present, the one who loves the family most. But beneath that mask of care, there exists a very precise mechanism of control. This mechanism works like this. Information is filtered. Conversations are relayed incomplete or distorted. Silences are filled with convenient assumptions. And gradually, without anyone consciously noticing, the image of certain people is molded, especially the image of those who dared to question, who refused to play the game, who insisted on maintaining their own perspective. That person was you. You questioned, you refused, you maintained your perspective, and for that, you became the family's problem. Not because you were the problem, but because you were the threat to the narrative someone needed to maintain. Now comes the part I need you to understand with great clarity, because it is fundamental to what is happening on these days, March 29th and 30th, when a person carries a truth within themselves, even if buried, even if denied, even if completely suppressed, the truth does not vanish. It remains, it grows, it presses. Human consciousness has an extraordinary capacity for resistance, but it also has a limit. And when that limit is reached, what happens is not an explosion, it is a silent implosion. It is that moment at 3 in the morning when someone you know is lying there staring at the ceiling, and suddenly a memory appears. Then another. Then another. And these memories begin to connect in a way that never happened before. It is as if the fragments of a puzzle, scattered for years, suddenly begin to fit together on their own. And the image that emerges from this puzzle is not the one this person expected to see. This member of your family, this one who for so long repeated the accusations, who saw you as the problem, who perhaps distanced themselves from you because of stories that weren't true, is going through exactly this now. They are revisiting the holidays you didn't appear at and remembering the explanation that was given. Only now, with the distance of time and the weight of what they are feeling, that explanation no longer sounds like truth. It sounds like a story told with great convenience. They are remembering the times you tried to explain yourself, the words you said, the expression that was on your face, an expression they ignored at the time because they were seeing you through the eyes of another person. Literally, they were looking at you through the eyes of the narrative constructed about you. But now, those eyes are beginning to be their own true eyes. And what they are seeing is different. They are noticing the pattern. That conversations about you always happened when you weren't present to defend yourself. That the comments that seemed like concern, "I'm worried about the path Sarah is taking. I think Michael needs help. I don't know what happened with David," actually followed a very precise logic of disqualification. They are noticing who was the architect of the division, and this realization is rewriting everything. I want to pause here for a second to ask you a question, and I want you to answer honestly within yourself. During all these years of misunderstanding, of distance, of being seen in a way that wasn't you, what did you feel? Anger, certainly. Pain, undoubtedly. But deep down, in the quietest place within you, what was there? For many of you hearing this now, the answer is love. You still loved these people. Even when they repeated the accusations, you prayed silently that one day the truth would come to light. Even when doors closed, you held in your heart the hope that someday someone would see what really happened. That constancy is rare, that capacity to hold love where others would only hold resentment. That is not weakness. That is one of the clearest marks of a chosen one. And do you know the cruel irony of all this? Exactly this light you carried, this clarity, this conviction, this refusal to participate in the dysfunctional dynamic was what bothered them most. You were a mirror, and mirrors are impossible to bear for those hiding things from themselves. When someone is in a comfortable illusion, the last thing they want is someone who, just by their presence, reminds them there is another way to live. You did that without intending to. And for that, you needed to be diminished, explained, problematized. But let's return to this member of your family who is awake in this night. This process they are living has a name in psychology: intense cognitive dissonance. It is when two completely opposing realities coexist within someone's mind in such a way that it is no longer possible to ignore one of them. On one hand, there is the narrative they carried for years, the version of you that was constructed and nurtured, the judgments they incorporated as their own, unaware they were imported. On the other hand, there is the real memory, the memory of your eyes, of your words, of your attempts, of your silence that they now understand differently. These two realities cannot coexist anymore. One of them must yield. And on these days, March 29th and 30th, the scale is tipping toward truth. This is not easy for them. On the contrary, it is likely one of the most painful processes a human can go through, because it is not merely about changing an opinion about you. It is about reconstructing their own identity. When this person fully realizes what happened, they will need to look in the mirror and recognize, I participated in this, even unknowingly. Even believing I was doing the right thing, I repeated the accusations, I distanced myself, I chose the convenient narrative instead of seeking the truth. That is humiliating in a way that goes deep into the soul. And here comes something I need you to understand, because it will be fundamental to how you position yourself when this awakening manifests more concretely in your life. The initial reaction of many people when consciousness begins to emerge is not immediate openness. It is not the call of apologies you imagine. Sometimes it is the opposite. Sometimes it is even greater resistance, an attempt to suffocate what is emerging because the pain of recognition is unbearable. Irritability without apparent cause, a deeper withdrawal for a short period. This does not mean the awakening isn't happening. It means it is happening with full force. Think of an iceberg frozen for decades. When the environment begins to warm, before it melts, it groans, it cracks, it makes noise. The thawing process is not silent. If you notice any strange behavior, any awkwardness, or even additional distancing coming from this person in the coming weeks, do not interpret it as a sign that nothing is changing. Interpret it as the sign that something great is about to reorganize. Now, I need to speak to you about something that goes beyond psychology, because this is not only about family dynamics. It is about what happens when the spiritual and the human meet. There is a universal law that many spiritual traditions, from Buddhism to Stoicism, from mystical Christian wisdom to indigenous teachings, recognize in different forms, but with the same essence. Truth always emerges, not in the time we choose, not in the way we imagine, but it emerges. There is a common saying that captures this well: the truth will out. And as cliché as it may seem, there is a deep wisdom there. Constructions based on distortion of reality have no long-term foundation. They need to be constantly fed, reinforced, patched, and a moment arrives when the effort of maintaining the illusion is greater than the comfort it offers. That is the moment this person in your family is living now. The days of March 29th and 30th carry a very particular energy, and I want you to understand what this truly means. Not in a superstitious way, but in a conscious one. Within the energetic cycle of these days, there is a combination of Saturn, the planet of structural truth, of what cannot be avoided any longer, with the dissolving influence of Neptune, which represents the collapse of illusions. In practical terms, this means the masks become too heavy to hold. The veils begin to fall. What was hidden begins to appear not because someone forced it, but because the sheer weight of reality cannot bear it anymore. For you, chosen one, these days represent a portal. A moment when what you planted with your dignified silence, with your loving constancy, with your refusal to betray your own truth, even when misunderstood, begins to bear fruit. Not necessarily in the form of a formal apology, not necessarily in a long cathartic conversation, Sometimes the fruit appears in a simple message, in a different look, in a gesture that breaks a pattern of years, in a silence that has a different quality than the silence before. Learn to recognize these signs because they are the beginning of something much greater. But now I need to ask you a question that may be the most important of this entire video. When this moment arrives, and it will arrive, are you prepared? Not just prepared to receive it, but prepared to receive it in the right way. Because there is a very common trap that people who have gone through this type of dynamic fall into when redemption begins to appear. They either shut the door completely due to excessive self-preservation, or they open everything all at once out of a desperation for resolution. Both extremes carry high costs. Shutting the door completely when someone is genuinely awakening can interrupt a process that, if nurtured with wisdom, has the potential to transform not only that relationship, but the entire family dynamic. Remember, you are not just an individual person in this story. You are often the point of reorganization for an entire system. On the other hand, opening everything all at once, dumping all the grievances, detailing all the injustices, demanding all the acknowledgements in one go, can overwhelm someone who is still in the middle of a fragile awakening process and push them back into denial out of self-defense. The wisdom is in the middle. It is in presence. It is in receiving this moment with the same quiet strength you maintained through all those years of misunderstanding. Let me tell you a story that happens in many families. Perhaps in some version, it is yours too. Imagine a family of 4 siblings. The oldest always was the one who held everything together. At least that's how she presented herself. She was always present, always involved, always at the center of everything, and at the center of the narratives too. The second child, let's call him Michael, always was the different one. In his mid-30s, he began to question certain dynamics, to not show up at some events where the tension was high, to refuse to participate in conversations he felt had a toxic quality, and gradually, without him fully understanding how, he became the problem. The story circulating in the family was that Michael was prideful, individualistic, that he thought he was better than everyone, that he had abandoned the family for selfish reasons. The youngest brother, David, grew up hearing this, and he believed it. For years, David treated Michael with a coldness that Michael never fully understood because he could never defend himself against accusations he didn't even fully know existed. Then, one day, David was going through a difficult time in his own life, a complicated divorce. And in that process, he began therapy. And in therapy, he began to recognize patterns of communication, patterns of control, patterns of narrative. And one day, he was looking at the ceiling at 2 in the morning, and suddenly the pieces fit together. He remembered a conversation he had had with the oldest sister about Michael. He remembered how the words were chosen. He remembered he had never heard Michael's version. He remembered a specific event the sister had described one way, but where he had been present and his memory of it was different. And in that silence of the early morning, David began to cry without exactly knowing why. But you know why. Because consciousness had finally found its path to the surface. This is the story that is repeating now, with variations, in your family, on March 29th and 30th. And now comes the practical part, because this video is not just for you to feel validation, though you deserve all the validation in the world. This video is to help you navigate what is coming with spiritual and emotional intelligence. First, do not force. The awakening of another person cannot be rushed. Any attempt to speed up the process, to present evidence, to bring memories to light abruptly, to demand recognition, will create resistance. Trust the process already underway. You need not do anything for the truth to emerge. It is already emerging. Second, care for your own energy. These transition periods are energetically intense. You may feel agitation, anticipation, a mix of hope and fear that is hard to name. Reserve time for silence, for prayer, if that is your path, for meditation, for being in nature, for any practice that reconnects you with your center. Third, work on your forgiveness internally before any conversation happens. This does not mean pretending the pain did not exist. It does not mean minimizing what you endured. It means you process what needs to be processed within you, so that when the moment of reconnection arrives, you are whole, not empty, not depleted, not full of open wounds waiting for a bandage. Forgiveness is not a gift you give to whoever hurt you. It is a gift you give to yourself. It is your freedom. Fourth, be open to surprise. The universe rarely delivers what we expect in the way we expect it. Perhaps it won't be a long, emotional conversation. Perhaps it will be a short message, an unexpected invitation, a subtle change in behavior, a story that reaches you through third parties. Stay attentive. The signs are coming. There is a spiritual dimension to this process I cannot leave unmentioned, because for many of you watching this now, this dimension is real and profound. When you maintained your integrity through all these years, when you chose dignified silence over a dirty fight, when you refused to participate in the dysfunctional dynamic even when it cost you relationships you loved, when you prayed in silence that the truth would emerge while learning to live without the guarantee it would happen, you were building something invisible yet powerful. You were building karma in the most literal and sacred sense of the word, not karma as simplistic punishment or reward, karma as the energetic law of cause and effect. Every choice you made from your truth, every moment you preferred integrity over comfort, every time you held love where it would be justifiable to hold hate, all of this was deposited into an account the universe does not forget. And these days, March 29th and 30th, are part of the process of settling that account. In many spiritual traditions, there is an understanding that ancestors work in the invisible field to reorganize relationships that need justice. Not justice as vengeance, but justice as the restoration of balance. The energy of peace and purity works precisely in this kind of reorganization, in the unveiling of truth, in the restoration of harmony where there was discord based on lies. In the Christian tradition, Psalm 37 speaks of this with a clarity that crosses centuries. Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret because of those who prosper in their way, for evildoers shall be cut off, but those who wait upon the Lord shall inherit the earth. You waited, you held, and now the time of inheritance is arriving. I want to speak now about an aspect very few. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.